Hello, I'm Nikki Starr. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing something slightly different, something new. If you watched my last video, we are upending a little bit of the channel. We had a lot of stuff that was happening. There's a lot of things I started that I didn't finish. We're refreshing ourselves. So what this series is going to be is we're looking at Tartosa, and we are going to do kind of Greek mythology inspired kind of families and house builds. The reason I say inspired is that if you know the Greek gods, there is a lot of, I don't know if I can say the word on this channel, relations with your relatives, and a lot of darker things going on. There's a lot of, just to warn anyone, it's not going to be specifically correct mythology. It is going to be kind of like a little bit of a play on it and a little bit more fun. As part of this, we're going to do a slightly different format to the builds that I have been doing. So we are going to start in Kaz, where I'm going to show you the household that I've made. Then we are going to go into kind of a speed build portion, and then I will come back and we'll do a tour with me actually here with you, because quite often with the speed builds I then move into doing kind of tours with just music, and I kind of want to be present a bit more. So that's the plan. So for this first household, just bear with me. Let's jump into Kaz and I will show you the family we have. Okay, so surnames is something that I hadn't thought of until I started doing this. I've put some surnames in for some people. It might not work. Again, to avoid the relationships with your relatives, the names have had to be slightly different from each other, but we're going to go with it. This is Hades. We're going to get closer. He is very beautiful. So this is his everyday look, which is lovely. We have his formal wear, which I'm very up for. We've got his athletic wear. Here's sleepwear, which is a skull. I know what I'm doing. Here's party wear, which I just love that outfit. Here's sort of swimwear. Here's kind of, I think that's hot weather, yep, hot weather look. And then here's cold weather. There are a few with a tattoo on them, which just came when I made the sim. But I like the idea that at some point, when he was very, very young, maybe he did a kind of, went out, got drunk, got a weird tattoo that means nothing to him, and just is a heart on his shoulder. I haven't cheated any of their skills or anything, but I've put him down as a public enemy because that feels appropriate. He wants to make enemies and become a sort of criminal. I could imagine that being kind of a modern day Hades-esque, wanting to hide in the shadows and do some kind of sketchy things. I've got him down as a snob, a dog lover, and if you've looked down in the bar below, you'll see why, and hot-headed. I could imagine that, and I'm also pulling in a little bit of like Disney's Hades. Very hot-headed. So that is Hades. We've put him down as Hades Olympius. Next, we have Demeter. Now, obviously, she can't have the same name as Hades, so she's going to be Harvest. This gets very awkward very quickly. She is, again, a very beautiful woman. We're going to go through her outfits. So that's her everyday. This is her kind of formal wear. That's her kind of full body look. Her sleepwear is quite basic, and then that is her like party wear, and I don't know why, but I just adored this on her. This will be her pool, her hot weather, which I've given her some sort of flat shoes. I can see her being more of a flat shoe person. I don't think I've given her a few wedges. I don't think I've given her heels anywhere. Go slippers on that one. Oh, there's some heel in that. And then in cold weather, that feels appropriate to me. That feels like what I would expect her to be gardening in. So in terms of everything else, we've got her down as a freelance botanist. That feels like it makes a lot of sense. I think Hades might be more well known, but Demeter, which I may be pronouncing wrong, is more the goddess of the harvest. So we've got her down as a botanist. That feels like it makes a lot of sense. Again, down as an animal enthusiast, that still makes sense to her. She loves the outdoors, and that she's a green fiend. So she will be trying to make everything eco-friendly. But that's Demeter, and then this is Persephone. Most people, again, probably know the Hades-Persephone myth. Persephone is Demeter's daughter. As a vague idea, the myth goes that Persephone ends up in the underworld with Hades, who convinces her to eat 6 seeds of a pomegranate because she accepted his hospitality, but not necessarily ate all 12 of them. There becomes an agreement between Hades and Demeter that Persephone will spend half the time in the underworld and half the time out of the underworld, because the 6 seeds kind of represent the 6 months, and that's why Persephone ends up as the goddess of the seasons. She's got a little bit of both going on. I am going with the idea that Persephone and Hades are married, and that there is a mutually exclusive agreement for that marriage. I know that isn't necessarily the way the myth works, but again, we're not playing on the darker ends of here, we're just having some fun. So this is Persephone, who, again, I'm going to say it every time I do this, very beautiful. I think I've done quite well with these. So this is her everyday outfit. We've got her formal outfit, which I just think next to Hades would look so like striking. Got her athletics wear. That feels to me like a very Persephone sleepwear. Her party outfit, again bringing out those kind of different elements that almost feels wintry but with flowers. Got her swimwear, her hot weather outfit, her cold. So a lot of different colours, which feels quite right for like the sort of spring elements of Persephone. Like her mother, she's all about the eco stuff. So we've got Eco Innovator down for her. She again is an animal enthusiast and a dog lover. Got both of those in there, and she is a recycle disciple as well. So I haven't done any likes or dislikes, but I will make these guys available, so if you want to add more to them, you are welcome to. And then lastly, we made a Cerberus, because of course we did. And look at this little good boy. Look at him. He is a Labrador Retriever. He is a hunter. He is loyal and very smart, because of course he is. Now I couldn't make him three-headed. But he is very, very beautiful. Look at it, look at the good boy. So that is the kind of family on this first lot. We're going to play on that theme of she spends half her time with Hades and half her time with her mum, or at least that in this situation she can kind of come from both. So in my vision, we will see if I change it, is to essentially have two houses connected in some way where Persephone moves between the both of them. So one that is very much the Hades darker aesthetic, he's very accepting of this concept, with maybe more of a sort of basement element, almost like the idea of going into the underworld kind of thing. And then Demeter's house, which is going to be a lot more sort of colours and a lot lighter, and a lot more kind of, I'm envisioning like more floors of them and a little bit of a garden somewhere. That's the plan. I am gonna leave you here and jump into the speed build element, and we'll meet up in a little bit and I'll show you a tour of the actual house. Okay, so this is the speed build. I have put it on this little island part. I can really imagine that this, with all the water around it, if you were going to have like an entrance to an underworld scenario or like a river Styx nearby, this is your one. But I did really go with that kind of theme of the two houses. You'll start to see it develop as we go through. There is a lot of trying stuff out, deciding it doesn't work, and going back. And I've left a lot of that in, like this, where I was thinking of an actual staircase going down into like an underworld scenario. But it just did not work, and we got rid of it, and we made a whole alternative option. So as we go through this, one thing I just want to note, in case this is something that's different for you guys, I have sped this up more than I normally have, mostly because this video is already a beast. It's so long, and I didn't know whether it would be too long, but I have sped it up quite a bit. Now, there are points where I fly around with the camera, which is not always my fault. Some of it is the Sims camera, but if you think this is too quick, if it's hard to follow, do let me know in the comments. I will try and make this commentary so that you can somewhat keep up with things. But we have now the two separate houses. Don't ask me why, but I've had this image of that coming together on the second floor and not the ground floor or underground the whole time. Just this idea of like a little tunnel somewhere that kind of connects the two houses up. But obviously it's very visible from the outside, and then it's somewhat more secretive from the inside for some reason. But otherwise, Demeter's house on the front is kind of more like a 3-story townhouse, and then Hades' one looks a lot smaller from the outside, but it's going to have a lot more underground elements to it. So I wanted to put like a staircase in this area, but I made the space very difficult for myself. So we pushed it back a little bit, and we don't keep it looking like this either. There's a lot of changes in this. I very rarely film a speed build. Okay, Nikki, you need to slow down so you can actually use your words. Very rarely do I do a speed build and I record it all the way through in one go. Quite often I will pause it and go do something else, or I will do a section in one day and then come back. And I think sometimes that changes the vibes. In this one, the lack of doing that and the fact that I did it all in one shot basically meant that there were points where I did dumb things and came back and realised them a little bit later. So there's points where like I block off the connection between the two houses. There's parts where I just change up a lot of things and I'm like, why did I do that? So we're going to have a great fun. It's going to be great times going through this all with you. So making the houses very distinct but somewhat similar. So they're using the same wallpaper but a darker version. They've both got quite a stone foundation going on. The Demeter's one's got a lot more flowers on the fence, whereas the Hades one is a lot more kind of higher and a lot more ornate. And then we do use friezes and things. If you've watched my videos before, I don't tend to use these very often, but I feel like if we're going to go with Greek gods, I feel like we need to like embellish the houses a bit, don't we? Which is why I quite like that fence with the kind of gold trim at the top, and the idea of using the friezes and whatnot. So I'm just adding a little bit of paving to Demeter's section, and then later in that section we're going to put a little bit of a garden in there. But so far I really like the aesthetic of this little island with these two kind of back-to-back houses, and almost from this angle you almost don't know Hades' house is there, and I like that a lot. So we're using these windows. We're only using windows on 3 of the 4 sides of the house. I have the idea that Demeter, while is accepting of the fact that there is this connection and they're married and she has to deal with this and the houses are connected, that she for the most part kind of wants to ignore that he's there. So I like the idea that she's like, right, I can see out of my house into the beautiful landscape, but I don't have to see his house behind me. And also on that little walkway I've put on a load of windows that do not stick around, because again I kind of wanted to keep it looking like a little bit intriguing from the outside, rather than anything very obvious as to what it was. A lot of this video is me faffing around with staircases, and there are a couple of bits where it looks a little bit strange. I'm not massively against it. I do like a bit of weirdness in some of these houses, particularly if they are these kind of god scenarios, and they might not be houses that were built for these purposes. They may have been done things later. It may be that that 2-story house in the back was maybe like a stables at some point and they've added the underground. Who knows? But this is Demeter's main house. We'd furnish most of this, I think, before we go to Hades. So the floor plan upstairs is very simple. There's a bathroom and a bedroom on each floor. The top floor is Demeter's herself, and the second floor, so the middle floor, if you will, is what Persephone would have lived in before she moved out, or in the 6 months that she does live in her mum's house, depending on how we want to play the myth in this. So we faff around with wallpaper in this part of the house for a long time, and this does not stick because, my god, this is a wallpaper combination. I wanted something busy, but then it just became too busy. I liked the idea of kind of a cluttered, very harvesty spring-like sort of layout to it all, but it was just too much. There's too many bunnies on those walls. And the kitchen changes a few times in terms of layout as well, but I quite liked having it in that little nook area. And I think later we add cabinets. Yep, this is me faffing around again. And the other thing you'll see me faffing around with in a minute is platforms, because the outside section is technically platformed a little bit higher right now. So I'm like, oh, I need a step to go into the house. And then I'm like, oh, alternatively, I could just not have it be platformed on the outside, Nikki. And then you wouldn't be faffing every 12 seconds with the fact that the floors don't feel right, because that step just looks odd. I play with the platform, I do all things, but then what happens is, if you see, the door peeks out on top of the wall, which doesn't look too bad from this floor, but then later I have a quick glance upstairs and notice it's poking through the floor. So we do fix it. I imagine that she does a lot of dinner parties, so the actual main feature of this lower floor, even though it's quite small, we haven't really got space to put too many big areas and aspects. That dining table is kind of the big point here. It's having people round. I can almost imagine like having big, especially around harvest time, like big meals with people. Lots of sort of produce that she's done, or like local produce, doing like big dinner parties and stuff. So this is where it is. This is where I notice that it peaks into the floor above, which is not ideal. and we finally fix it. And what we also do is move the entrance, because what I was really struggling with is to find anywhere of putting any form of living room. And while I like the idea that the dining space down here is the priority, I did also want to have something where when Persephone was growing up, or when she does have like Persephone round, something a little bit more cosy for the two of them. So it's a very, very small living room space, but there's a lot of seating. So again, when she does have visitors, when she does have people round, she can make that work for them all. We finally moved that fridge out of the way. There's a lot of points where I was like, why did I choose to do that? And because it was a couple of hours since I'd started the build, it was a lot of coming back to myself and realising that I should probably change it up ever so slightly. But this does feel a little bit like cramped, but I would say more in a kind of cosy way. So a lot of space for people to come sit and a little TV to watch, or for the two of them just to kind of lounge about. In the actual mythology, Persephone is Zeus's daughter, but I imagine that if that is the case, I don't know if we're gonna, when we get to a Zeus, what will happen in terms of family trees. But I've just got the idea that Demeter and Persephone have always just been on their own. Whether that's a case of an absent father, or whether that's in case of maybe like a sperm donor situation, who knows? But I've got the idea that they've spent the whole time growing up just the two of them, and it's very cosy vibes, which is why I think she felt a little bit more betrayed when her and Hades have kind of gone away together, and Demeter's like, nope, we are going to make this work. You are going to stay as close to me as possible. I don't like the man, but I will have him in my back garden if I need to. So we're going to start littering up the place with plants and flowers. Also on the wall, I put some paintings there, the 4 kind of green paintings. I'm going to harken back to those a little bit later, because I imagine that Persephone and Demeter either painted them together, or Persephone painted them as like a gift, because I do put similar ones in Hades' house. There's a couple of like parallels where it's more kind of Persephone's voice coming through, because I did realise quite early on in this build that there's not a lot of her in a lot of these. Right, this is where I'm very, very silly, and I do come back to fix this. I put a closet in the way of the walkway to the other house. We fix it later, but it's just one of those moments where I was doing it and went, oh, I'm going to have to edit that and not look silly. And I can't take it out because I leave it and walk away, and now you'd see it if I cut it out. It still would be there, so I'm just going to own up to the problem I made. So here we're doing like a little bathroom. I originally was going to have it as an ensuite to Persephone's room, but actually this feels more like the bathroom that guests would use. Otherwise they've got nowhere to pee, or they have to go into her room. So quite white, basic, neutral, but still lots of plants in there. I finally decided to put a light in there a little bit later. But yeah, for the most part, quite fresh and neutral. And then Persephone's room, I don't know why, but I had this real blue and pink thing going in my head from the second I put that wallpaper on. So we're going to rearrange some of the colours of that desk in a minute and go for more of a kind of pink and blue, which is quite unusual a combination. I don't think I've done a pink and blue room before, but I love it. I really did like how this came out. So I like the lamp with the plant in it. Again, I imagine Demeter is up here checking on it constantly, making sure it's still there for when she comes home. And then I've added these kind of touches of the yoga mat and the meditation mat. I feel like that's something that maybe Persephone is into. And there's little nods to that again in both houses. And I love that piece for her with the kind of plants and the pictures all kind of together. And then just a nice mirror. I think I put a rug in. There's a lot of rugs in this house. I quite often don't put a huge amount of rugs places, but in this one I seem to just go, oh, this could do with a rug. So under the stairs we're just adding plants. Basically anywhere there's a gap I'm sticking a plant in, which is my usual pattern anyway, but it feels really, really appropriate for a house that Persephone and Demeter are in, so I'm not going to be too mad at myself. And then that top floor, here we go. This is me realising that what I needed was a way to get between the houses. So we get rid of that little stupid room. We do put secret doors in now. I understand that from the outside you can absolutely see there's something there, and again I take those windows out to make it a little bit less obvious. But I imagine that if there's guests that maybe haven't looked behind the house, or are quite happy to go along with Demeter's idea that there is not a house behind there, it can be more hidden than if it was an actual door, and it's less likely that one of her guests is just going to stumble into Hades' house, because I imagine if that has happened on 1 or 2 occasions, it has ended up with some pretty nasty words probably between the two of them. So this is Demeter's room. We've gone again for a blue and a pink. I don't know where this came from, but the blue on the walls is more of a grey. It's more grey and pink, but sort of deep reds and pinks in this room again. I just realised, and I do apologise, I have not put curtains on this house, but they are on a little island, so the chance of someone seeing in is probably very low. Or we could just say there's some frosted windows in the places where you'd want the windows to be frosted. I'm so bad at curtains. It is that thing I will always forget to put on these houses. So just again, doing a very simple clean bath, but there's a pink shower in there and a pink bathtub, but a lot of storage in there as well. And then I'm playing around with this frieze because it won't do what I want it to do. And I think that is the end of sort of Demeter's house, with maybe a couple of additions, and her garden, which we haven't done yet. So we're going to start looking at the more dark aesthetic of Hades' house, which, let's be honest, if you've been on my channel for any length of time, you know that what I'm doing in his house is my aesthetic, and what I would want if I was doing like a darker themed house. But we don't have windows. So this is the idea that he's kind of hiding a little bit away. He likes the darker idea, but also like the atmosphere of it. So there's a lot more kind of warm light in this one. We use sconces in the first couple of floors, and then I think we use the same lamp for the rest of the house for like a ceiling light, but with a more kind of warm tone, with the dark sort of walls and the dark woods. A lot more moody. A lot more feeling like this is going into the underworld. So obviously there isn't anything in The Sims that would become an underworld, and I resisted the urge to put a graveyard in this. But like, if there was to be some kind of magic portal, it would be somewhere in this house somewhere, or potentially like maybe not a portal. Portal sounds like the wrong way of putting it, but if there's somewhere that they would go to maybe have contracts to move on, or something like that. So the layout of his house, a little bit more focused on that middle corridor and then bringing rooms off of it, whereas Demeter's was more kind of working up floors. It's a much bigger space for him down here, but in some ways a little bit more closed off. So where Demeter has like that open plan living and then a couple of big rooms and a bathroom, Hades has more actual rooms that are sectioned off, that are for specific purposes. So this top room, when they first come in, I wanted like a little snug area. Originally I was just going to do like a massive study, and just put like desks for both of them, but it didn't feel like the right thing to first come into, and to have kind of the feel of Hades and Persephone, and obviously Cerberus. So I've put a massive dog bed, mostly because I was a little bit worried about trying to fit one of those in, because they are quite large. We leave that sort of out because I had a panic and didn't know what to do, but we come back later, so it's all good. And then in here we're going to do a dark kitchen with kind of like a little utility space, but not like a room. It's just sectioned off with a wall. I did put laundry in, but I'm not convinced I put laundry baskets in, so you may not actually be able to do your laundry in this. But you can add that in later. It's fine. I very rarely do everything correctly in these, and we are aware of that. So I use the Snowy Escape kitchen, and I don't necessarily add a lot of clutter to it later. I had a look through, I had a thought about it, but there isn't enough clutter to fill all of the space that I'd put in there, and it just would look, I think it would look weirder to have a few random bits and pieces. So I like the idea that maybe they've just recently renovated the kitchen, and so they had a few things maybe in storage, which they're still sort of bringing in and adding to this. So We also need to ignore the fact that I put a sink on top of these. I tried not to, but the aesthetic of any other sink just doesn't fit with these. So the plumbing is hidden in the walls. And there is still storage underneath them. Ignore the fact there's no pipes or anything. Got a couple of bowls for Cerberus. As I say in every build where I put pets in there, I am determined to use 2 bowls because there should be a food and a water bowl. I understand that is not how this game works, but I cannot stop myself from doing it, so we're going to use both. Then in here we're going to do a dining space. So again, there's a lot of chairs, a very big dining space. So I imagine there are examples of Hades needing to make sort of deals with people in conversation. Those similar paintings to the ones in Demeter's space. So again, either Persephone is making these or she gifted them similarly to both of them. And obviously because they're not in each other's houses, they don't necessarily know. But I imagine she told them that they've both got similar ones in there. But yeah, I imagine he does have some guests, so he probably has another way of getting people in. I imagine a certain magical element to these guys. I know that isn't, again, how the Sims work, but I imagine he's got a way of getting visitors in here if they needed to. And then a tiny, well not tiny, but quite a small little living room, which again is just more for the 2 of them. It's just more like a snug kind of area. It's not designed to have lots of visitors in there. The main space for visitors would be the kitchen and that dining space. And then in a little bit we're going to go through Hades' study, which has a certain element of visitorness. I'm not making any sense. It's been a long day. We're doing a little bathroom in here, which again, for anyone who's visiting, it would be used for. The room downstairs does have like the bedroom downstairs has an ensuite, so I can't imagine it being Hades and Persephone's main bathroom. But going with lots of greys, nothing too dramatic. Bathrooms are quite boring in The Sims, but I think we've all said that many a time. And then just again, anywhere where there is a space around the weird staircases, we're putting a plant. That seems to be a common theme in here. So this is going to be Hades' study. I initially used this wallpaper, but do not worry, it doesn't stay like this. And then we put a desk in the middle of the room. So I imagine again, when he has to have people here, he's got a slightly more uncomfortable looking chair for them. And he makes a point to make them sit in front of him and go through it all. Another spot for plants. In Hades' house, I imagine those plants to be fake because there's no lights and no windows. But like Persephone probably still wants some element of that kind of sort of greenery in the house. And then this is like their main suite. So we've got the main bedroom, we've got what will be a walk-in closet and a bathroom. But again, I almost instantly forget the fact that I've made it a walk-in closet and start putting clothing stuff over in that corner. Basically, Nikki wasn't paying attention today. But we do put a massive fireplace in here. Again, do not worry about the logistics of where the smoke goes. I imagine there's some form of godly magical element. We're just going to look past it. I just really liked the aesthetic of this room down here being all warm and cozy with like a proper big bath in the ensuite and like a proper like cozy space for the 2 of them. So that's what we're going. We're going for vibes today. Vibes in the downstairs, not thinking about the logistics. Then I want to put another dog bed in and realise I had a whole room that was designed for the walk-in closet to go into. And then I think I'm just adding on some decorative bits and pieces down here. Trying to remember how much more I've got of this. I think we're close. I think I just need to do the garden up in Demeter's. Oh, in this room that we left alone. So in here we're doing kind of similar to what Persephone has in her main room. Exact copies of them, but in darker shades. So she's got a little study in both spaces. I think Hades wanted to make a point to give her the space so that she can do whatever it is that she wants to do. She's doing a lot of eco stuff, I think, if I remember correctly from her CAD stuff. So, you know, maybe doing a lot of newsletters or going off and doing the ecologist career, which you need the computer for points. So no matter what season she's in, she can always do her work. And then I'm going to leave the voiceover here. This is just a very basic garden with a couple of bits where Demeter can do some planting. So if you bear with me, at the end of this, we will jump into like the final tour with me back in person. So we are here. I love this little area. I don't know why I picked this. It feels like it's like away enough from the rest. It feels like where you would put Hades if you were looking at Tartosa. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong too. But this kind of, if anything was going to be a portal to the underworld with like the river Styx, it feels like this is the place. So we did do the kind of idea of Demeter's house and Hades' house kind of extended onto the back, almost hidden when you first come through. Like I can imagine from like a distance up here, most people don't really necessarily know what's going on. And then as you get closer, or if you were to come visit the house, you can see very obviously the kind of extension on the back of them. I'm sure I've gone through this all in the speed build. I haven't actually voiced over the speed build yet, so do bear with. Let's do a very quick little tour. So this is the kind of living room dining space. We come straight into plants. We've got the little living room, the dining room. I can imagine her having lots of people around. Kitchen. So we come upstairs. We've got a little bathroom, which I imagine also a lot of the guests use because there isn't one downstairs. We have a nice little area with books and stuff. Nothing to see here. No secret portals whatsoever. And then in here is like Persephone's like childhood bedroom before she met Hades, which again she still uses when she comes back. I really liked this kind of piece with all the plants and everything. Under here we've got more plants just hiding around the house. And then upstairs we have kind of the master suite, so Demeter's suites. We've got lots of like pastel pinks, some deeper pinks over there. I don't know why pink was the colour I went for in here, but it very much was. And then I love this shower for her. It just feels perfect. Bath, shower combination. So if we come back to the bookcases that have absolutely nothing going on, no, don't question anything, we go through those, we are suddenly in the much more Hades aesthetic. So we've got like a nice little relaxing sort of snug room with sort of your books, a nice fireplace and a spot for Cerberus, because you need a spot for Cerberus. Then we're going to go down, and then in here we have essentially Persephone's study. So it's the equivalent in terms of the desk and things that she has in her mum's house, and she has a meditation spot, which in the other bedroom she has as well. But it feels more like a difference for her between the two. So we go down here in this very complicated stair system where they haven't put anything behind here yet. We have a little nook for like laundry, a very, very nice kitchen. I would be more than happy to have that kitchen. Everything here is a lot more enclosed than in Demeter's house. A lot more kind of rooms rather than kind of the open space she's got. A lot more of everything, to be fair. Dining room in here, a lot of sort of blacks and greys, very on theme, and a little print of a cat. A devil cat, and not, I don't know why I loved that so much. I keep changing the style of the camera, I do apologise. Got a Hades study with like one uncomfortable chair. Now I imagine this is like if he's having meetings with people, he's all nice and comfy, and then he has people come over and they're just sitting on that horrible like just plain wood, and it's really uncomfy. And some books on there, mostly for show, I imagine. Little bathroom in here. Again, I would say for visitors, but I don't imagine Hades having many that aren't maybe business associates. Going to be a bit cautious. I think being down on this lower level is making my free cam have a bit of a moment. So we've got the downstairs, very industrial looking. Again, another spot for Cerberus. Must have multiple. And they're like, oh yeah, it's having a real problem. Yeah, okay. I'm just going to go to this because the free cam isn't having it. Their own personal bathroom, massive fireplace, which I just imagine, roaring fire sitting there, your dog over there. It just would be so lovely. And then in here, like a walk-in closet area. Not a huge amount of stuff in here. They're not very cluttered. They've got a lot of like storage, but not a lot of just space open. And again, plants dotted around the place as kind of a nod to Persephone. And on the outside, we've got for Demeter a little area where she can do some kind of farming, gardening. And then this tree, which I love. Which in the nighttime will light up for them. So yeah, this is the first Greek myths inspired Tartosa house. Do let me know in the comments if you have any ideas of anyone else. I think the next one I'm thinking is that there's a beach. So I'm thinking a Poseidon build, possibly, and I could be getting my mythology mixed up here, so I will check this and come back. I think him and Aphrodite sometimes have a bit of a thing. I think we might do a Poseidon Aphrodite kind of thing on the beach lot, which I think would be lovely. Let me know if there's any others that you would like to see in the comments down below, or any comments on the way the format of this has worked, because it is feeling quite different. So let me know how you think it worked. As always, thank you so much for watching. I've been Nikki Star, and I will see you in the next one.